Hey, this is the first of my unscripted thoughts video series. I don't really know yet. Again, still apologize about this not being part 2 of What If World Tour Wasn't a Musical. I'm getting closer, but it's still a lot. Next Sunday, it should probably be out. Before we get into it, I feel like it's important to preface this video with two things. First off, I've never not had a script for any video that's been like substantially long. Usually like my 5-minute update sort of videos, I don't have a script for those. But anything else usually has me reading off of some sort of script. So I'm sorry if my thoughts seem a bit scattered and unorganized because they're scattered and unorganized. Also, if you don't know what Reality Resort is, you should probably go watch that first. It's just one episode right now, it's only like 25 minutes. You should really watch it before you watch this video. You're gonna be very confused by what I'm talking about. And I think it's a really good beginning to what this fan-made project season will be. So yeah, go check that out first. Also want to preface that I have never watched Big Brother, which is what Reality Resort is based off of. So I have no idea how eliminations actually really work. I've had it kind of explained a couple times, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm still fucking confused. I know that like 2 people are put up from nomination, and then there's some sort of like veto challenge where you get a veto to get yourself out of nomination, and then if you get yourself out of nomination, somebody else gets put in nomination. But I don't know who that person who puts you in a nomination after that you veto is, or how the 2 original nominations are even decided, and who actually votes them out from that, if it's from the team, if it's from the entire group, or how that changes at the merge. I'm lost. I don't get it. I don't know it. So my elimination order, I mean, it's already probably going to be way off, even if I did know how eliminations worked, because I only have one episode to base my knowledge off of right now. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that this elimination order in no way is meant to actually be correct. I'm pretty confident that most of these guesses are completely off because I just don't have enough information, and I'm kind of like the blind leading the blind here. I don't know what I'm doing. So this is in no way meant to be super accurate or educational. This is mostly just for fun and for me to kind of express my opinions and thoughts about what characters I think are going to make it, however far. And with that being said, none of those claps sound good. The first person I think that's going to be eliminated from Reality Resort is Charles. The first boot here is the one I have the highest chance of getting correct, as obviously nobody got eliminated in the first episode, but we do know which team lost, and that the first person eliminated is going to be from that 8-person team that lost. And out of all the people there, Charles feels to me like the one who has the least going on. Obviously we're going to talk a bit more about the other characters later, so I don't want to get into them too much right now. I feel like there's already been seeds planted about his uncontrollable condition of laughing at people when they get hurt that's being planted for him to be like a early boot, because he's probably going to laugh at injury that's very serious and people are going to think he's a psychopath and he's going to get eliminated from that. I wouldn't necessarily say I fully believe he'll be the first boot. I feel like it will take a bit longer to get to that, but out of everybody on that team, he's the only person I can even kind of think of as the first boot. I don't feel like anybody else is really in that hot seat right now. The only other people I can even consider is Topaz because of her leg injury, and TJ because he's the one who quote unquote blew the challenge, even though he didn't really blow the challenge because he could only start his drink later because his team was worse at getting the ingredients, and even then he was only barely behind Bab. The narrative would probably be pushed that he's the one who blew the challenge. But even with him, there's a scene at the very end of the episode where he's like talking about, oh, I'm gonna save myself, I have a plan, which means he's probably gonna try and like find an idol, get an alliance or something. Either way, I just think it'd be really weird if VJ had this like ending confessional where he's like, watch out, I'm not gone yet, and then he gets eliminated first. Like, I don't see that happening. So just out of a process of elimination from that, Charles is the only person I can really see who could be an early boot. And honestly, I'm kind of hoping I'm wrong. I really do think Charles could be an interesting character, but he did not have a lot of scenes in this first episode. I don't feel like he's getting a lot of focus. He only had one confessional, which was explaining like, I laugh when people get hurt, and then he had a couple lines of like, I'm a teacher, I laugh at people when they get hurt. That's mainly his gimmick. And to me, it feels like he's getting all those scenes right now because he's going to be an early boot. So you want to give him some sort of content before he goes, because that's typically what happens with early boots. They get a lot of content in their elimination episode or like quickly before it. And it doesn't feel very character specific to me that he's actually going to have a deep run with this, because I don't even know why they'd have him be a character who laughs at people getting hurt if he was going to have a deep run. It feels like the type of excuse they'd give to an early boot. So I don't have a lot of confidence for Charles. The next person that I think will be eliminated is Kylie. Kylie is a really tough one to get a read on in this first episode because she doesn't get a lot of content. She's one of the few people on this cast that doesn't get a confessional in this first episode, episode, and all of her content is very generic. None of it was character specific, none of it was even like talking about herself. Like these other characters, they have at least like one line saying like, oh, this is my background, or oh, this is what I'm into. But all of her lines are the very generic first episode comments. Oh, look, we're on a team. Go team, we can do it. Don't you think this challenge is weird? It's all very basic content that could be given to any character, which tells me that there's not a lot of plans in the works for her. I also see her being a very early boot because her sort of, nice girl, little bit of an airhead character gimmick is already fulfilled by two of her people on her team in Annalise and Cheryl. And I feel like both Annalise and Cheryl are already given a lot more content than Kylie to stand on, whereas Kylie doesn't really have anything. I don't know if she'd particularly be a second boot, that feels a bit much, but I think naturally with reality elimination sort of shows like this, usually one team loses and then the other team loses, and out of everybody on the other team, I don't really see anybody else being this second boot. Obviously we're going to get into the other people later and why I think some people that might be not making it as far I wouldn't at least get eliminated here. Kylie to me looks like the only one who could reasonably begin out at this point, and I just don't feel like there's a lot of plans in the works for her anyways. My prediction for the 14th person eliminated on Reality Resort is VJ. I don't know what to make of this character. He's someone who sways very radically for me. I could very much see him being an early boot, I could very much see him being late merge, especially in the way he's being handled in this first episode. He's not getting a lot of content, but it does feel like he's getting a lot of focus, like he's a character that they want to expand on more, but I don't know how else he really fits to anything. The only thing I can really think of is him having a connection with Monica, because he had a couple scenes where he was talking about her, he seemed amused by her, and they definitely both seem like people that could get along, both these sort of like spiritual, preppy, outgoing people. But I feel like the way VJ worded his ending line in this episode, basically saying like, I have a plan, I'm going to save himself, it tells me he's someone that's going to try and play very hard, and I think it's more or less just going to lead to a burnout. It's also just tough because I really feel like a lot of people on VJ's team are people I envision, or maybe I just mentally want to make it very far. VJ doesn't exactly have that exact same oomph to him like the rest of his team does. I will admit this is a boot that so far I'm the least confident in. Out of the three I've already talked about, he's the one I'm the least confident in being in this sort of pre-merge phase, but I don't know if I see much from him going forward. And yeah, obviously again, it's the first episode, there's much that could change of him, and I do feel like VJ has a lot of potential to grow as a character and make it to the merge and make it even further. But just out of everybody on the team, he's someone who I can't really see having a good connection with anybody on his team strong enough to stay. It really depends how much blame he gets for this loss, and I don't think it'll be much, but I feel like he'll make it more than it has to be. My next predicted boot is Topaz. This might seem like a bit of a curious one to some people. Topaz is someone I think is a very big character. She got a lot of content this episode. A lot of it was pertaining to her injury though, and I feel like that's probably what's going to cause her to be an early boot pre-merge. That injury is going to get worse, people are going to notice it, and she's going to get booted for it. And I mainly say that because I don't have any other reason to imagine why they would put so much focus on that. She could make it merge. I already feel like there's a lot of characters that fulfill her role. I don't think I really need to see her at the merge, and if there's anywhere you'd want to take out this injured person, it would be in a team setting. Also, she's already been shown to be getting on Olive's nerve, and Olive's someone who I see being very antagonistic on this season, and she's already starting to like plant these seeds of, obviously my fortune telling is incorrect, but she's still planting these seeds to make people believe it's real. She's still having all these correct guesses, and I feel at this point, people would believe her when she says a thing is going to happen. And because she doesn't like Topaz so much, she'd probably tell her team like, I see in our future we're going to keep losing if we keep Topaz on the team. I'm probably going a bit too deep with a guess like that, but my point is that Topaz isn't super well positioned. People like Olive, who has a lot of influence against her. I could see somebody like Brad on the other team not liking her because she is like a strong player, and he's already been talking to Sarah, so he could talk to Sarah and say, hey, you have to get rid of her, she's going to bring your team down. The only person I could see working with Topaz is Tino, because they're both very similar, like fighting, hard-working characters. We'll get into it later, but I don't think Tino is going to do very well either, so it doesn't mean a lot to me. And my prediction for the last pre-merge boot is Finn. Finn was easily the hardest person to predict getting eliminated this early. That's mostly why I put him as the last pre-merge boot, because there is a lot that could be done with Finn. But I have a lot of issues placing confidence in Finn making it particularly far, because him and Marcus kind of share a similar backstory. They both have this backstory of their ex-wife leaving them and it hurting them in some way. But Marcus is a lot more general, and Marcus got a lot more content. I also feel like Marcus being a much more bitter, hateful person, there's a lot more of a story to be told there of him. So I feel like Finn's gonna kind of get pushed aside in that margin, and then Marcus is gonna take focus as like like the ex-wife broken character, especially because they're both on the same team. That also makes me doubtful that both of them would make the merge with this similar backstory and character on the same team. That feels like a bit much. It is completely possible they bond over having ex-wives at some point, but even then I don't think that's enough to save Finn. And I'm also very worryful about Finn making it far because he's someone I think will be aligned with Brad. I do think Brad will make it very far, but the issue is that I feel like the people that Brad are going to want to target on his team are not people that I see going so soon. Mostly when I think of people like that, I think of Drew, and we're going to get into Drew later and why I think he'll make it a bit further, but I don't see Drew going out this soon, and if that's going to be someone who, at least to me, makes a lot of sense, someone Brad would want out really early because he's not good at challenges and socially he's a mess, then in turn, if that plan gets ruined, that means one of Brad's allies would be in trouble, meaning Finn. Finn's the most likely to get shade for that because he's the person I see Brad being the most closely aligned with on this team. I mean, the exception to that I guess could be like Annalise, but you know, I don't think Annalise is particularly a threat. I don't think she's dangerous enough to like want to get rid of this early. Meanwhile, Finn is a lot better socially, he has a lot more connections, and because this is the last boot of the pre-merge phase, they don't have to worry about their team strength going down because, you know, they'll know the merge comes after this. Again, a lot like VJ, I'm super iffy about Finn going out here. I could totally see a universe where he makes it merge. I could even see a universe where he makes like final 6. There are a lot of stepping stones that I could see Finn taking. I mean, even deciding pre-merge boots, it's really hard because we don't have enough information. And whenever a good season is started and made, ideally the cast should be so well developed and special and different that you shouldn't really be able to envision any of them as early boots. They should all be people that you could envision making it far because that's just like a telltale sign of a good cast. A cast isn't particularly good if there's very obvious, really odd, terrible characters that are going to be your obvious first boots, because that's just boring in a lot of ways. So it's tough because I really do like this cast and I think everybody has something to offer if they made it to the merge, but obviously not everybody can make it to the merge. So all of these pre-merge selections, they're all very iffy, you know, I'm not 100% sure on any of them, and I do feel like the people I have later in the elimination order, I am a bit more confident about some of those people making it far because it's easier to see like what people got a lot of screen time and say, oh, they're probably going to get more focus, instead of people who didn't get a lot of screen time and say, oh, they're going to go, because it's fully possible they're not getting a lot of screen time now because they're going to get a lot more later. You can never really tell. So yeah, all pre-merge boots here, super iffy for me. I'm not sure, but with that being said, let's move on to the merge boots. In 11th place, I see it being Cheryl. Cheryl's an interesting character because I do feel like in a lot of ways she is being given content, and especially content that suggests her having more to do later. The issue I have of her is that I already feel like she's starting to be kind of set up as this stupid character. She has this first confessional basically saying my line of work is all about appealing to other people to get them to do what she wants them to do, and it doesn't feel like she's a very serious character in that. It kind of feels like she's being set up for failure, like she's this character who's going to think a lot more of herself and think she's a lot more capable than she is. Even if she can find herself in alliance, which I do think she'll be able to do because she seems like a very personable character, I don't see her being a power player in that alliance. She seems very much like a person who's just going to kind of float around in an alliance doing what other people ask of her than actually being allowed to make any decisions. I mean, she even does that kind of in this first episode. She doesn't have a lot of content where she's directing the narrative of what's happening. It's a lot of her just floating around with other people and adding on to what they're saying and what they're doing, but besides her only confessional, there's not much to really differentiate her from anybody else. And again, she kind of feels like a Kylie and an Annalise in a similar sort of archetype, and she will probably be a fair amount different from Annalise, where she seems really obsessed with like beauty and flirting with people. Meanwhile, Cheryl just seems like a nice person, which I do think is probably a facade to some degree, but I don't think it's nearly as much as someone like an Olive, because you already have Olive on the cast. You can't have her also being kind of this dupe character, because it just feels unnecessary to me to have two of those, especially because Olive already feels so much more established than that and feels like there's a lot more to do with her. You don't need to have Cheryl also be that kind of person. It's only the first episode. It's kind of unfair to really say like, hey, she can't form any storylines at all because of this first episode she's building off of other people. It is fully possible for her character to redirect and become more assertive and become more dominant in social strategy and strategy in general, but I don't really see that for her, and honestly I see the people ahead of her being more strategically sound or safe in some other way than I do with Cheryl. Again, kind of like the pre-merge boots knowledge there of just like, I think the people ahead of her are going to do better, and I don't necessarily think Cheryl herself will do this bad. I just think the people ahead of her are going to do better. For the 10th boot, I have Tino. I don't have a lot of confidence in his ability to adjust himself into a group. The only reason reason I wouldn't even really have him as a pre-merge boot is because there's obviously no way a team's going to vote him out in pre-merge because he's a really strong physical team asset. But the inverse of that is once he makes a merge, I feel like he's going to get a very big target for being a big physical threat now. Honestly, I could see him going a bit further in the competition just based on his physical asset alone, but I don't see him making it any further than like 9th because there's no way people are going to let him get that far when he's that strong. I don't think he'll be terrible at social integration. He's already been kind of seen to the work with like the Brads and, you know, the other physical macho guys in the show. But the thing is, I don't really see any of those guys actually wanting to work with him long term. I definitely don't see Brad wanting to work with him because Brad is someone who's already flirting with all the women. I think he's going to have enough social sway by the merge that he doesn't need Tino at that point and would rather want him gone than to continue staying in the game where he could potentially win out the rest of the challenges later on. I could see Finn and Seth working with him, but I don't think Finn's going to be here obviously because I think he's going to get eliminated sooner, and I don't think Seth will have enough sway at this point to save Tino, and even then he might want to get rid of Tino so he's the physical frontrunner because I imagine Tino is probably Seth's biggest adversary when it comes to physical competitions. My point is I don't see Tino being exactly a useless player. I do think he has strategic value, I do think he has social value, and I do think he can integrate himself well. The issue is that his physical prowess is just going to make him too big of a threat that I can reasonably see anybody allowing him to get past 10th. 10th isn't even a bad spot for a character like Tino who's this very big, obvious threat that I see getting eliminated early on to kind of set the tone for the rest of the season. Again, I could see some variance here. I could see him making it to like final 9 or even getting eliminated a bit sooner depending on how much he wins out, but I don't think he'll have enough power to save himself here, especially because I also predicted he's going to be working with Topaz, and Topaz will be eliminated by this point if my elimination order is correct. Again, it's not gonna be, but like based off trying to predict it, you know, on what's happening, Topaz won't be here and he'll have aligned himself with somebody who's gone. Not a lot of options for Tino in my vision. And my predicted 9th place boot is Drew. Like I alluded to earlier, I don't see Drew being a pre-merge boot, namely because I see Charles being a pre-merge boot, and I don't think both Charles and Drew would go pre-merge because they're both kind of like the dorky, not as like conventionally attractive guys in the cast, so you can't get rid of both of them so early when they're sort of the unique stereotype in that. And I obviously see Charles going so soon because of, you know, what I said earlier. I feel like there's a lot of build up to that, but I mainly see Drew making it a bit further because there's a lot more build up happening around him. He's already been sort of hints of him and Isidore being some sort of duo. I don't know if it's actually them going to be super close, but I do imagine to an extent they're going to work together given that they're both similar in age, and I do think Isidore likes keeping him around, even if it's for sort of mean reasons to bully him. I do think she'd want to help him out and save him for a bit, especially in the pre-merge. However, beyond the pre-merge, I don't have a lot of faith for Drew as a player. He's terribly socially, he's not looking very impressive physically, and when I first saw him I thought maybe he'd be sort of this like broody, nerdy, spiteful guy. He'd be against like all these conventionally attractive people and buttering their egos, you know, being sort of like a mastermind puppeteer underneath the covers, doing all the things underground, working these very shallow personalities. But after seeing more of him in this first episode, I don't get that vibe from him anymore. He feels a lot more like a comedic relief character. He's a conspiracy theorist, crazy, out of touch guy who's just going to say a lot of absurd things, like a Harold sort of character, but it doesn't actually seem like he has a real mind for the game or any sort of strategy. And I mean, that could change. I do think it's possible he comes up with some sort of stuff, just given like how intelligent he seems to be, but I don't think it'll be nearly as much as I originally thought it was going to be. I could see him making it a little bit further, maybe to like 7th, but I don't see him making it any further than that because he just doesn't seem like a very competent player. I do want to make it clear that this in no way means I think he's going to be a bad character. I really do enjoy Drew and I think he's going to be a fun presence on this cast, but just as a player, I don't feel like there's a lot that can be done with him. I don't think a lot of people want to work with him. I don't see a reason why he'd be someone that a lot of people want to keep around, and he's sort of like this easy person to get rid of in the early merge because, you know, he's not physically strong, so you don't have to worry about him saving himself from elimination. Again, don't fully get how elimination works, but I imagine there's some sort of physical aspect there of like nominating people. So yeah, that's all I really see for Drew. And in 8th place, I see Sarah. Sarah has been given a lot of content, and I do have a lot of confidence that she's going to have some sort of arc in the show. The issue is I don't really know what the timeline for that is. I feel like there's already been hints of her being like manipulated by Brad. At the end of the episode, Brad approached her and talked to her, and you kind of see that she was a very easily impressed person. There's definitely going to be some stuff of her working with Brad, thinking that they're getting along and being friends, maybe even like dating coming into the merge. And the question is how soon, or if she even does ever realize that Brad's just using her. I do think she's smart enough to realize, like, around maybe the Jew Tino vote that, you know, Brad's not on her side and she's just using her. But then again, she's also really impressionable. Either way, I just feel like I don't see Brad keeping her around for super long. She seems very loyal to him, but I imagine a lot of other people are going to be trying to talk to Sarah and convince her that Brad's not working with her, which is either going to make her realize Brad isn't working with her, or is going to make her not as easily trustworthy for Brad to keep around long term because he's not as firmly in his pocket, and, you know, she's kind of a tool that other alliances could use against Brad later. Mainly people like an Olive, Isidore, maybe even potentially like a Marcus talking to her. I could see all those people going to her being like, you're being played by Brad. And again, I'm still very iffy on if like Sarah realizes that she's getting used, or if she goes along with that and then Brad gets rid of her because she turned on him. I don't know, but either way, I don't think she'll survive through the wrath of Brad, because Brad is someone I see making it very far. So the second she kind of becomes a target for Brad, I think that sort of marks the end of her time on the show. I don't see her being the person to take Brad out. I feel like she's kind of a pawn to his game, and she's going to be taken out to show Brad has a lot of influence in this merge stage. And the 7th place boot I see being Olive. This is mostly because even though she's being put in this sort of antagonistic role, I don't see her actually playing the main antagonist of this season. She feels a lot more just like a chaos agent, like someone who wants to do bad just for the hell of it. I don't really get the sense that she actually cares all that much about like manipulating people to get to the end. I obviously think she's playing to win the game and would be willing to stoop a bit low to get there. The thing is, once it gets revealed that she doesn't have any psychic powers and she's just been bullshitting everybody, I don't see anybody wanting to work with her at that point. I could absolutely see her making it further than this, but the issue is that I feel like after she gets outed as a psychic, the other people who I see her role potentially being like sort of this anti-hero or like obstacle for the main antagonist, who I view being Brad, those are filled by other people already, and they're going to be filled in a much bigger way than they will be with Olive. I will admit this is a very interesting place for Olive to find herself at, because even though I see her being the 7th place boot, I actually think she's the second winner pick out of everybody left. Even the people I'm going to mention in a second, I still see her being my next winner pick over the obvious person I chose as a winner, because she is getting a lot of content and I think she's a really interesting character, but I feel like there's not much forward momentum for her after she gets caught. And there is obviously a big question of like, will she ever get caught? But I feel like at some point with how many other people there are to take up her role, I don't think she's going to be able to hide the secret all the way till the end, and eventually somebody's going to catch her out on her lies. As for who, it's kind of a toss-up. Mainly lean towards Brad, you know, him being this antagonistic, smart person. He'd probably figure out she's been lying to all of you, so she should go instead of me. I don't know, something like that. But realistically to me, I think she's just going to play best as a second antagonist. I don't know if she really has enough power to hold control of the entire game. I do think she'll be a very influential player pre-merge, even probably early merge, but I just don't know how realistically I see her making it past like 5th. The 6th place boot I see for Reality Resort is Marcus. I'm going to start this conversation by admitting that Marcus is making it a lot further on this list than I originally thought he would, and that's mostly because I realized when I had him in the spot I had him in before, that the final 7 ended up being like 5 girls and 2 guys, so I felt like I should probably even that out a bit more so the gender ratio is a bit closer, and Marcus was the next highest placing guy. But even in saying that, I don't feel like 6th place is a super crazy place for Marcus to find himself in. I do feel like he has been seen to get a lot of screen time in this first episode. As I did say with Finn, I think Marcus and him kind of share a similar spot, and weirdly enough, I could easily see Finn and Marcus switching places here, Marcus being the last P-merge boot and Finn being 6th place. It really depends what direction they're going to go, and I will admit, I have difficulties seeing an actual outline for Marcus's character growth. Like, I don't know who specifically you'd interact with to become a better person or anything like that. That's the only person I can really see him relating with to try and fix his terrible attitude about life. It is possible you talk to someone like Monica, who's also like, you know, a 40s person who's, I believe, in a happy relationship, so I think that he could talk to her and maybe figure like, that's what I wanted and that's why I've been acting like this. Maybe someone like Annalise, because she flirts with everybody a lot, so he'd see her interacting in relationships and realize he doesn't need that sort of thing. I don't know, like, all those are kind of iffy outlines of ideas, and that's because I really don't know the actual plot or story of what's going to happen with Marcus. All I really know is that I'm really confident there's gonna be stuff there for Marcus. I just don't know the excruciating details for it, and I don't exactly know how his role actually plays into this season of making it further. I don't really see him as a winner pick. I don't really see him integrating in social strategy a ton, which is why I find myself putting him here at 6, even though he's a really interesting character with a really interesting backstory with a lot of opportunity for character growth. I just don't know how he actually fits in the story of this all. The 5th place boot I have for Reality Resort is Annalise. Annalise is such an interesting prospect of a character. She definitely fits into sort of this like Julia, Heather, pretty mean girl type of role. I'm not afraid to say this at all. I don't want to see her be a Julia or a Heather. I'm really tired of seeing this villain. I've seen him with Heather, I've seen him with Julia. I've seen it enough, honestly. I don't need to see that sort of stereotype making it far, God forbid, even being the main villain or focus of a season anymore, for like a good while at least. Now luckily it's not looking like Annalise is actually going to be that sort of character. She doesn't seem nearly as cunning or clever or diabolical as them. She feels a lot more like a Lindsay, this sort of airhead, except unlike Lindsay, she seems really okay with the idea of like flirting as strategy. Flirting with guys to get them to work with her and create alliances that way. I'm not sure how effective that's actually going to be. There's only so many guys she can flirt with, honestly. I mostly just see it sticking around with like Seth and Brad because those are the two people she's doing with this episode. You know, we'll obviously get to Seth and Brad later, but I think they're both people who are going to do very well. And probably what Annalise's focus of this sort of season is going to be. I don't know exactly how it's going to work. I definitely imagine her being a sort of right-hand woman to Brad. I don't think she'd be so oblivious that she wouldn't know he's a bad guy. I do think she started to pick up that at some point, but I don't think she could really care all that much. And even if she does, I still see her having forward momentum working with Seth. So either way, I feel like Annalise is super well positioned to make it far. She kind of falls in this like role where she's not going to be viewed as a threat, but she's still going to have a lot of social sway in what's happening. Even though I don't want sort of this Julia Heather stereotype, there is always that as an option for Annalise too. I'm really positive of Annalise being able to make it far into the game. And in fourth place for Reality Resort, I see being Isidore. This is mostly because of kind of what I said earlier of Drew about how I don't think he'll be a pre-merge boot, but he will be targeted pre-merge, so people from Brad's sort of contingency won't necessarily succeed or get eliminated. And because Isidore is the one that's close with Drew and she's going to be the one who's going out of her way to save her, I definitely see her being the main thorn in Brad's side for the entire game. I do think there's a world where she goes a bit sooner here. There's probably some worlds where she trades spots with someone like a Sarah, but I personally feel just how much content Isidore's getting and her character being a very sort of like calm, laid back, sarcastic, not really caring person, I feel like she can do very well being pitted against Brad and still having avenues to make it further in the game. I don't see Isidore breaking Final Four though, because even though I think very highly of her and I think she'll do very well, I don't really see her as a winner pick, and I don't think she really needs to make it to Final 3 if she isn't going to win or make it to the Final 2, because even though I do think she'll do really well, I don't actually know if she'll have really strong dynamics with many people. I mean, obviously the main one that's been alluded to and that I'm kind of going with is Drew. And I do think there's going to be sort of a rivalry dynamic between her and Brad, but I don't see her getting along with anybody else in a drastic way. I do think there's points where she could talk with people, maybe people approach her. In general, she seems like a very closed off person, so I don't really see a lot of opportunity there for her to grow unless they're going to kind of like switch her character around and make her more vulnerable, but I don't really want to see that. I feel like the whole point of having a character like her who's super closed off and sarcastic and not caring is that you don't betray that, because then there's just no point to even having her be like that. I don't know, it's really dependent. She is a teenager, so I guess it's like kind of explainable, but I just hope that her character stays a bit more solid to what she is, and if she is staying more true to what we're seeing, then I don't see a lot of reason for her to make it Final 3, because either what's going to happen if she makes Final 3 is she doesn't win immunity and she gets eliminated because she's not well positioned for anybody, or she wins immunity and then she has to decide who to take to the end, but it's like, does it really matter who she takes to the end? Because I don't imagine she's going to have a close connection with anybody. Like, there's no emotional stakes there to who she's going to take to the end. So really, I feel like 4th is the best place for Isidore to find herself in, and I do see her being there considering she feels like she has a lot of main character energy. In 3rd place for Reality Resort, I see being Brad. Now, I don't really know what else I can really say about him. I've spoken a lot about him with other people. I easily think he's going to be the main villain this season. He seems like someone who's going to have a lot of focus on him, of a strong belief that he's going to be the one manipulating all the social strings, all the strategy strings. He really seems like the full package for a perfect manipulator. He's charming, he's cunning, he's smart, and he still has this background where he can work with people really easily. He's good at flirting with girls, and he's good at broing out guys. I really don't feel like there's that many negatives to Brad that could really cause him to be an early boot. I don't see a universe where he gets eliminated early because there's no blaring issues to me about his character. You could argue, like, I don't know, maybe he's a bit too frat boyish and people will target him for that. I think in this particular cast and even his team, him being this more fratty sort of guy, That's not bad at all. That's great for the personality on his team. I don't see him getting targeted for that, and he's already aligning himself super well. There's no world where I see Brad being a P-merge boot. There's no world where I see him being an early merge boot. I do think maybe, depending if they want to give more villain focus to Olive or a different character even, then maybe it's possible Brad goes to like final 7, final 6, but I really don't see that. I feel like Brad is being pitted as this really big figure. He has so much screen time in this first episode, which is a little odd considering he's not even being given any big plot lines right now. Like most of the other people in this first episode are giving confessionals to explain their character, explain their story, explain their background, explain what they're going to do. Brad doesn't really have confessionals to kind of say, hey, here's what I'm going to do. He has confessionals just touching on his character in a very non-important way. Like he has, his first confessional is he talked with Finn, said, I'm 30, I'm getting up there, I got divorced, I'm worried I'm running out of time. And Brad's like, yeah, he's running out of time. Once you turn 30, that's the time for you run out of fun, which is like alluding to his frat boyish character, but that wasn't really necessary. And the fact that he's getting confessionals like that where there's not that much importance and they aren't even really needed in the first episode where you're supposed to be introducing everybody and he's still finding time to get confessionals like that, I would find myself extremely disgruntled if he somehow got eliminated before even like final 5 would be amazing to me at this point. However, with all that ass kissing out of the way, the main reason I don't have him in second or first is because even though I do see him being an extremely strong villain in this season, I feel like he's someone who's definitely going to go to reality royalty, which is like I don't know how to explain it. Just go watch the episode, they'll explain it way better than I possibly can here, but I feel like that's when he's going to shine, and I don't feel like he really needs to be a winner here now because he's already going to have a big enough threat from the game he played going into that season, but then also having to be the winner, it just feels tedious. And also, I don't really know if he'll actually be able to win a vote. Like, he is really good socially, but I imagine making it to the end, he's going to burn a lot of bridges, so I don't think he'd win anyways, but I also don't really see him getting taken to the end by the other 2 people I'll talk about in a second. I'll touch on those more of them instead of Brad here. And the second place finalist I see for Reality Resort is Seth. Despite having Seth this high, he is definitely my biggest question mark, even this final 7 people I've talked about, because even though I have him this high, I could very much see him being an early merge boot, not only because Brad in this first episode was already talking to Annalise about Seth and being like, don't trust Seth, Seth seems like a bad person, so I definitely think coming merge it's possible that Brad could target Seth and get him out. I don't really know if there's a reason to get Seth out at that point. Seth doesn't feel like he's going to have that much of a target on him, and it is possible that Brad goes through with it, but I feel like Seth at that point could also have created strong enough bonds to not be targeted immediately. And that is kind of like a Hail Mary, fingers crossed kind of argument where it's just kind of saying, I do think Seth has potential to save himself, but I'm willing to send a prayer on that, mostly because Seth is getting a lot of screen time in this first episode. Again, like a lot of the other characters I'm talking about. He seems like someone the show really wants to push forward, and it could fully be possible that he's getting a lot of screen time right now because he's gonna be eliminated early and you want to give him this big presence so he feels important. Don't really get that vibe from him. I feel like there's a lot of arc to be built with him, and I do think that the show values him a lot. And similar to how Isidore is going to be a forward in Brad's side, I definitely think Seth is also going to kind of take that spot. However, I don't think Seth is going to predominantly take that spot because he's someone who I see doing a lot more socially with other people, and I could see him having much bigger storylines outside of just his issues with Brad. You know, it's all also obviously dependent on so many other factors, like if he figures out Brad ever target him, if Brad ever goes fully through targeting him, if he's just trying to get Annalise on his side. There's a lot of factors here that I just don't know yet, but either way, I don't think Brad will be the main focus of Seth. I do think Seth has enough character and enough personality that he'll be able to find himself being a part of other things outside of that. I could fully see Seth as a winner pick here, but I decided to go with this next person as my winner pick, mostly because I feel like even though Seth is a super interesting character, I kind of feel like it's a similar thing with Brad. I do imagine he's probably going to have a spot in reality royalty, and then, you know, Seth and Brad will have a more predominant rivalry in that season. So I don't think he really needs to win here. It kind of taints what the essence of their rivalry would be about, you know, them trying to fight to prove one's better. I don't know. That's probably more so personal preference than anything, but I do just think this person I'm going to speak for the winner pick has a lot of other things going for her where I don't think Seth really even needs to win as much as her. And with that segue, my winner pick for Reality Resort in this elimination order is Monica. I know this is an extremely weird pick. She doesn't seem like a typical winner, and that's honestly kind of exactly why I think she's gonna be the winner. On a season like this where it's very, I don't know how to explain it, it's like preppy, sort of like popular people, really glamorous sort of lifestyle. I don't feel like it's going to be a conventionally attractive like person winning the competition, someone who's super strong sociably. I feel like it has to be one of these people who is kind of more on the outs of that. And I feel like Monica is the perfect pick of all those people, because even though she is not, your typical beautiful person, she is not terrible in any other meaningful ways. I don't think she'll be bad socially at all. It seems like people mostly adored the fact of how, like, happy she was to be here, happy she was to be like this mom loving figure. But I do think she'll have a mind for the game. I do think she'll take the game very seriously because she is playing for her family. So that's already two really good pluses, in that she'll have a great social game because people trust and like her, and she'll have a great strategic game. Well, I don't know about great, I don't know how intelligent she is, but I do think she'll have a good strategy game and at least be involved in alliances, and maybe not like the head figure for making decisions, but I do think she'll have a lot of sway and opportunities where people are going to try and get her on their side. I could totally also see her aligning herself with someone like Brad, not knowing how bad he is and just working alongside him very cooperatively and very effectively. And that's also in part why I have Brad at third place, because I think Monica is going to be the one to eliminate him in that spot. Monica feels like a great mix of this strong character who has a lot going for her, but at the same time isn't a strong character in a way that's going to be a hindrance or an early boot sort of character. I definitely feel like she'll have a lot of power, and I could be completely wrong about this. I do think it's possible in a world she gets eliminated like 7th, maybe 10th if we're really going there, but I don't even think I could see her as a pre-merge route. I feel like she's not going to be able to mess up her game that badly, and I genuinely have a lot of faith in Monica as a player. Take that as you will. I know it's a weird pick, but she is truly the person, as I examine this cast more and more, that I felt like she has a really good chance to win. Probably wrong though. There's my elimination order for Reality Resort. Again, apologize, this isn't the What If Part 2 continuation that will be coming out next. I just wanted to do this video in the meantime because I've never really had a chance to do an elimination order prediction video, which is something I've always wanted to try and do, but I always end up getting to a season wherein the elimination order already starts, or way too late, or just something I'm not super involved in yet. So because of the timing of this, all of Reality Resort just coming out and they're not actually being a first boot yet even, I figured it would be a good time to try and take a stab at this. Also because I am just really interested in Reality Resort, and I really, even again here now, will plead again that you go and watch all the episodes when they come out in time, because the series is really tuning up to be something I truly believe is going to be great, and it continuing is solely based on the support it gets from its fans. Again, I really hope that you'll go give it its love and attention. It deserves everything you have to offer it, and yeah, bye.